Um, Thank you very much, everybody, for coming today. What we would like to do is to welcome you, both from Inspire as well as Metropolitan. Metropolitan Magazine being very proud to help get people be informed about a very important subject, which is real estate investing. There's a lot of myths, a lot of misinformation out there. And what we'd like to do is to make sure that people are better informed as the market on property valuations, the due diligence, and just the property characteristics are changing in the midst of COVID. Even without COVID, it's important and always better to be well informed, and it helps buyers and sellers make better decisions as they're trying to execute property transactions. So I want to first let you guys know that Raf, who is going to be speaking with us, Raf Jacobs, is an expert in the area of, property markets and transactions, and he's been written a number of articles with the magazine and will continue to do so. And this is the first of a series of 4 of an episode, if you call it that way, that's going to last approximately 40 to 60 minutes. Raf is pretty quick, and he's going to ask for interactive question and answer sessions at the end, so we can make it longer or shorter. We just want to make sure that it's very relevant. At a very high level, the different themes that we're going to be covering have to do with the most important to know tips in buying a home. And then in October, November, December, we're going to be having different themes on buying processes, on the mortgages, and what can go wrong. So if I can, let's now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our expert, Raf Jacobs, who is basically working with Inspire Boutique Apartments and property experts. They are the go-to experts in helping people buy property. So we encourage you to ask questions, put them in the chat session, and then we're going to answer them all at the end. Also, if you have a personal question that you would like to ask and you don't want the rest of the people watching to see the nature of your question, an example might be perhaps some people are going through a divorce and they want to know they want to be discreet about the process they're going through, but they do want to understand a very important question. You can send an email directly to the Inspire Boutique team, and they will answer you in due concern. So without further ado, Raf, you want to take it from here? You're a great lecturer, expert, awesome director of Inspire, and real estate mogul. Come on, talk to us and tell us what we need to know.
Thanks, Victor, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us today. The purpose of this session and of the other episodes of the series is really to provide insights, analysis, tips and examples, do's and don'ts that can help you make better decisions with regards to real estate. Better decisions, whether you want to buy a property, invest in a property, to rent it out, if you want to sell a property, the things you need to know to take better informed decisions. An informed decision also means that you don't make mistakes. It also means that the sector, the agencies don't abuse the fact that you might not understand the way of working in Spain, that you might not speak the language, that you're not maybe used to, or maybe you're a first-time buyer. That's also part of not making mistakes. As Victor mentioned, four episodes. We put a lot of thought in how to structure the series. I think it's the first time someone does this. We want to build a continuous series of information flow towards the audience. Today, a very important topic, things that you need to know. Corona has changed the market. What is happening? How big are price drops? That's what we talk about today. Next time, October 6th, we talk more about the process. Spain is very different from many other countries, and that's the origin of many problems as well. There's going to be plenty of examples in episode 2 about stories from things that could go wrong, that you should watch out for, etc. Episode 3 in November is about financing, mortgages. About half of our customers, of our buyers, they opt for a mortgage. Some because they need it, others because they think it's financially intelligent to leverage a bank and put less own money into a purchase. And the last episode in December is we're going to talk about the typical trade-offs that you have, that decisions you need to make when buying a property. Now, I'm sure there's people on the call today, you're all in different stages of your real estate journey. You might be dreaming of buying a property. You might maybe be visiting properties today and close to making an offer. Maybe you've committed already. Maybe you've signed an ADAS contract commitment. Maybe you've paid 10%. Or maybe you're thinking of selling a property, de-investing and moving on, doing something else. So I'll try and use examples that are relevant for each of these groups. And again, use the chat function below, please. We've got Jeff here monitoring this, and I'll respond to your questions towards the end of the session. Okay. Final point, all the examples, so just you understand where my examples come from, why do I say what I'm saying. There's two main angles for our expertise. One is the macroeconomic insights, the long-term view on the market, demand and supply, interest rates, how does Corona affect property market. That's all great. But the second angle is, and I think this is more important, is the day-to-day work we do in the market. We're every day negotiating for buyers, we're every day evaluating properties, shortlisting or dropping properties from the basket when they're not good. We have a notary with buyers. So that brings a lot of expertise, insights that are very useful when making, because every buyer has different priorities, has different worries, and that's what we combine and offer to our customers as well when we help them. So before we jump into the details, a quick question. So you know now who we are, but who are you? We're going to launch a quick poll, and you can answer easily on screen. And this helps me to understand who's in this webinar, and this helps me as well to pick some examples or other examples. Give it a few seconds here. Okay. I'll share the results in a bit. 3 out of 4 people have voted. If you should see something on your screen, a pop-up message where you can just say if you're looking into buying, investing, or selling a property. Okay. Okay, you can still do it. We see, okay, 85% has voted. We see 4 out of 5 people is looking into buying, and nearly 1 out of 3 is thinking of buying as an investment. And 2-3 people in the audience are thinking of selling a property. Okay, I mean that's helpful for me. Thank you for sharing this. So we're going to close this here. Okay. So what are we going to talk about today? Briefly, because you need to understand the context. How does the property market in Spain work or not work? It's probably different from your home country. And then we talk quickly about what's happening in the market today with Corona. Prices are dropping, the opportunities, the risks, the challenges, etc. What does that mean for you as a buyer? And through the tips and the examples, the do's and the don'ts, you will hopefully be able as well to see the warning signs when you go out on the market and look for properties and need to decide to buy, invest, or sell a property. And at the end, some practical tips for if you want to start a process or restart it or accelerate it, what is important today. And then of course your questions. We take time for that. Okay, so how does it? I'm going to stop sharing the. Yeah, maybe there's another question here. Jeff, do we launch this? This is an interesting one because a lot of confusion happens at this stage when everyone likes to be the customer, everyone likes to be treated as a customer, and the customer is king. But in a real estate transaction in Spain, who is actually the customer? So the main channel for people to find a property or to buy a property is you search online, and then you get in touch with an agency, a realtor. That agency shows you the property, has sometimes some information about it, but then who is actually the customer of that agency? Who are they helping? And that's the question here, that's the poll on screen now. So is it you? Are you a customer? Is the seller, the owner, the customer of the agency, or are you both customers? Because that's what agency should do. I would assume they should intermediate and help both parties to get to a good deal. The question is on the screen. The answer is very interesting. Okay, a few more seconds. Okay. Someone else wants to vote? 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. I will end the poll and I will share the results. So you should see now. So this is what you've told us. Huh? This is not my view. 12% thinks that the buyer is the customer of the agency. Half of the audience here today thinks that the seller is the customer of the agency, and a bit more than 1 out of 3, 38%, believes that both buyer and seller are customers. Now the reality is so this is a very good sample case here, because that is where things start to go wrong. In Spain, a real estate agency, or in Spain you say API, they only work for the seller. So half of you is right. Half of you is partially is wrong, basically. What does it mean? That the seller gives a sales mandate to an agency to sell their property, to make pictures of it, to advertise it, to show it, to negotiate it, etc. Whose interest is the agency defending? The seller's interest, of course, not the buyer's interest. Now, where's the conflict? What is the message that an agency typically gives to the buyer when you go and see a property? They say, we're going to help you. We do this every day. We are a trusted agency. We speak English or some level of English. We've got lots of buyers like yourself, and we got contracts. If you want a lawyer, actually, we have some lawyers that we can recommend to you. Conflict of interest. Big conflict of interest. The agency gets paid by the seller, by the owner, and they get paid once you put your signature on a ARAS contract, typically. So once you commit to buy, and you pay 10%. So they're not defending your interest, not at all. They want basically to have quickly your signature. People that have been visiting properties or maybe buying or very close to buying, you might have noticed that agencies can be very pushy when you visit a property to come to their office. They say, come make an offer, come with me, because there's other buyers, and if you want it, you should make an offer not too low, because the other couple from yesterday, they come back tomorrow, and I think they can pay the asking price, etc. And then they put a document in front of you, a reservation document, which they want you to sign, because that is what gives them some level of certainty, that's what they can show to their customer, to the seller, and that's when they start negotiating about the price. So be very mindful of this. Even worse, if an agency tells you, if you want a lawyer, we can recommend some lawyers. Here are three lawyers. Feel free to pick any of them. There's a big conflict of interest for the lawyer, because he's recommended by the agency who works for the seller. So never do that. You need a lawyer? Yes. Don't buy a property without a lawyer. It's not enough a lawyer, but take your own lawyer, someone who represents you in the transaction. So what is, I stop sharing my screen now because we go, how does it work or not work in Spain? There's three important things to keep in mind when you look at the property market, when you consider buying. One is the market is nearly not regulated. It's very different from most other European countries. It's different from the US, from the UK, etc. What does it mean? There's no regulation. It means anyone can sell properties. You don't need qualification, you don't need training, you don't need to retrain yourself, update your knowledge in every 2 years or so, as is the case in France or in Belgium, etc. It's not the case here. Anyone can sell property. Yes, it's true there is in some regions, like in Catalonia, a requirement to register, but only the head of the office, the owner of an agency, should do that, and the other people don't have to do that. And it's a very simple certificate. You get it basically by doing a few classes or by paying some money, and you get it. Anyone can sell. On top of that, because of no regulation, a seller, an agency, salesperson, is not obliged to give you as a buyer all information about the property. So if there's problems, if there are defects, if there are technical issues, if there is debt on the property, if the owner has a business that went bankrupt, if there is an inheritance that hasn't been sorted out yet on the seller side, they don't have to tell you. You have to do that yourself as a buyer. If you don't ask the right questions, you won't get the answer. That's a principle that's used. And in addition to that, the notary, who in many countries has an important role to control that everything is okay with property, has not that duty in Spain. The job description of the notary is very light, very different. And you only see the notary the last 1.5 hour of maybe a 4-month journey. And that's not to do controls on the property, because that's too late. It's just to formalize the deed of purchase. But that's block one, no regulation. Number two in Spain is there is an important lack of transparency regarding property data, etc. What does it mean? If you want to know if a property passed the mandatory technical building inspection, it's not easy to find out. If you want to know if how the financials are in the condominium, you need to go somewhere else. If you want to know if an owner paid the city tax, another instance you have to go to. If you want to know if there is charges on the property, inheritances, debt, things that are linked to the property. It's not transparent. You can't just find that data by a few clicks or by going to a few places. It's impossible. But at the same time, good properties sell quickly because there is demand in Spain, and certainly in areas like Barcelona or some parts of the coast or other larger cities. So you need to take a quick decision because properties sell quickly, but you don't have the information available. And that's where, again, a source for a lot of mistakes, where as a buyer, you might be emotional about a purchase. You love the apartment, you don't want to lose it, or the house, you don't want to lose the house. So the need for quick decisions is incompatible with that lack of information. And three is, agencies just love foreign buyers. We need to face reality. It's a lot easier for them to sell a property to a foreign buyer than to a local buyer, because of the constraints you have as a foreign buyer, obviously, but also because you have, if you live here, or you will know the city, etc. But you might have different reference points. We had a case recently there was a buyer from France, and we saw a house outside Barcelona, an hour and a half from Barcelona, direction Costa Brava, and it was on the market for on the market for 340, and he said, like, what a great price, because he was comparing to France, to where he was living in France, and we saw the property. We saw, like, this is way overvalued, and it's not good value for money. So that's what agencies like, because they can try and sell for more money, therefore they get more commission from their owners, from their customers, and they typically have less questions, less difficult questions in the process, because you might not know what questions to ask. So non-regulation, lack of transparency, and be careful with the fact that you're a foreign buyer. Important. We saw a case, comes to mind now, with a couple who bought a property south from Alicante, between Alicante and Murcia, an off-plan property, beautiful, 223,000 euros. So they had paid, there was 136,000 euro pending to be paid at the notary of the 223. This happened during Corona. What did the agency say? They said, all our customers are paying 90% of the total price now, and they leave 10% for the day you go to a notary. And they say it in such a convincing way that as a buyer, you think, like, well, everyone is doing this and the property is ready. We're just waiting because we can't travel. And a lot of people did this. We stopped this for our client. We didn't allow him to pay 90% of the property. It's not what's agreed. You shouldn't do that. And it just did a way that sellers try to get the money as quick as they can, um, but then they get the money, but you have no document in exchange, no guarantees in exchange, because the purchase deed, the title of ownership, you don't have it yet, the keys, you don't have them yet, but you've paid 90%, and then you're against the wall. You can't discuss, negotiate anything anymore if something is not okay. So be very, very careful with that. In the next webinar, in October, we're going to go in a lot more detail about this topic, why Spain is different, how does this affect the process, the different steps, and what can go wrong in every step, with examples. So we're not going to do this now. Now we talk about the market, the prices. The property market has, because of COVID, suddenly shifted to a buyer's market. The market was attractive across Spain. I'm going to talk a bit more about Barcelona than just Spain in general, because most people here are interested in Barcelona. Buyer's market with big discounts on the market, so property that are significantly below prices from 6 months ago. But at the same time, these discounts are often not advertised. So how do you get them? Two options, either through a negotiation. You need to make sure the property is good and you negotiate. You can get them. Negotiations are more difficult and take longer because the owners don't see, etc. They need time, but through negotiations. Or two, simply because the property is not on the market. It's not on Idealista. It's not on Fotocasa. So they're off-market properties that you don't find, but they are they have lower prices, but not advertised. Today, or the last months, and we expect this will happen in the next months as well, the importance of off-market properties is increasing. And that's because in an economic recession, which we are in today, clearly, you always have people who need to sell or want to sell. They need cash for personal reasons, for their business, for whatever reason, they want to sell. And what they do is they first sell non-essential assets. So they first sell properties that have been rented out, or they first sell a second home on the coast, etc. But people that need cash, many of them want to be very discreet about it. They don't publish this on the listing platforms because your neighbor will see that you're selling your property. So these things move off market. That's where we find a lot of good deals through the network, where we are often the first or second to see properties before pictures have been made, before listings have been published, etc. So a buyer's market, price drops, but what does that mean in terms of prices? We expect that in Spain, as an average, prices will drop this year around 10-12% on average this year. Transactions will also drop. There will be less people buying property, selling and buying property this year than last year. 1 in 5, 1 in 4 less than last year for sure, easily. So it's 20%. But it's not. There's no general rule for all of Spain. Spain is very diverse. You can't compare cities like Madrid, Barcelona, with the coast, where there are holiday homes and foreign buyers, with the inland or with the islands. It's a very different market. So for Barcelona specifically, we think prices have dropped and can drop this year between 5 and 15%. I know that's a wide range. I'll explain you briefly why in a bit. For holiday homes or properties outside Barcelona, outside Madrid, or outside the big cities, I think price drops will be rather in the range of 10 to 20%, so significantly more than the cities. Why is that? Barcelona is typically it's a very strong city in terms of real estate performance. For prices to drop less, that's because there is a stronger economy, there is investor demand for properties, because it's a good city to invest in. There's an international community who is living here, wants to rent here or maybe buy here. That's things that you don't find, for instance, in Alicante. Yes, there are expats. Yes. How many big companies are there? Not too many. In Valencia, similar. It's like football. It's first league and second league. Barcelona, Madrid, they play in Champions League, and then you have the second tier cities that perform less, but are more vulnerable to price decreases during a crisis as now. And for the holiday homes on the coast or houses, apartments outside Barcelona, where they go to let's say an hour and a half from Barcelona or metropolitan area, demand plays a big impact there. Foreign demand for this year, foreign demand is very, very difficult for property because people can't travel. If you can't travel, not too many people buy. We've got clients who bought properties without seeing them. It's investment properties. The demand is significantly down, of course. At the same time, if you go further away from Barcelona, the economy will probably be hit harder. And people that work in companies, working class people, might be hit harder by the recession, might have more uncertainty about their jobs, therefore will buy less property, will not qualify for a mortgage because banks become a bit more restrictive. Therefore, demand goes down, and when demand goes down, typically prices go down as well, a bit more than in a city like Barcelona. So that's prices. Now, at the same time, interest rates are very, very low. August, it was in the news now today. There's a new historical low in terms of interest rates, the Euribor, the reference interest rate in Europe. It's negative. And that's obviously an incentive for people to buy properties. Money becomes very cheap. You can access capital. Who benefits from the low interest rates? It's not. I mean, in the previous crisis, 2008, interest rates were like 3, 4, 5%, depending on what you're looking for. Today, you can lock in fixed interest rates. We did one yesterday, 1.4, 1.4% fix. A buyer who is, I think, 32 years old, brings in 58 or so thousand euros own capital, buys a property of 240,000 euros, nicely located in Barcelona, quiet area next to metro station, etc. What do I want to say with this? You need to be solvent to access financing with a bank, but solvent doesn't mean you need 200,000 euro on your bank account. We see deals today where couples with 45 to 50,000 euro qualify with a job. That's the second condition. You need to have some savings, 40, 45, 50,000 euro and stable income. Qualify for mortgages and can buy properties in Barcelona or around in the range of 240 to 260,000 euros. That is very attractive. Who is benefiting from this? Then from the lower prices and the very low interest rate. So people, first-time buyers, young people as well, young professionals, people who live in a place that you would like to have a larger place, an upgrade because you got kids or you just want more outside space or swap an apartment, a city for the countryside. That's one group. Second group is people that switch from renting to buying. Because with these interest rates today, and most people don't do the calculations properly, but if you pay €1,000 rent per month, which is like for Barcelona, an indicative example, and you buy a property in the range of between 250 to 350,000 euro, you'll probably save between 5 and 8,000 euro net per year by being an owner, after having paid the interest to the bank, etc., after having paid the costs. So that's a calculation when people realize this, that makes them really think about why I'm still renting. In combination with lower prices on the market now, it's probably good to buy. And the third group is obviously investors. The investors doesn't mean the big companies. Investors means can be people like you and I who have a job, have a business, have a family, and you have some savings. And again, you don't need a lot of savings. And say we want to invest those savings not in the stock market. We don't want to have them on the bank account. We prefer property, which is less sensitive to crisis, to fluctuations, than, for example, the stock market. And they buy small central apartments, 1-2 bedrooms, for example, in Barcelona, and they rent them out. And it's a mechanism to get some income in the future. Beside price drops, as we've mentioned, and low interest rates, there's obviously also uncertainty, because Corona brings, I think this year is the year of uncertainty, economically speaking, but also regarding property, regarding people's job, etc. Now, this makes some people stop their plans. They say, I'm not going to buy. And we've seen clients, they had a lot of their savings in the stock market. They lost 35% in value on the stock market, so they don't have the funds anymore to buy a property. It's very simple. You can't buy. But other people, they're worried. They don't do it. They wait. And other people, they look beyond the current uncertainty, look beyond the crisis, and they see the opportunity. And that we see a lot of those people in the international community in Barcelona in the last month that think like that. That one not rush, but prepare well. And if the opportunity is there, buy it and either upgrade your lifestyle or buy good investments. So if you've been searching on the listing platforms, you might say, Rav is saying that there is 10-12% price drops in Spain or Barcelona 5 to 15%. Why don't I see them? Because people tell us we see a lot of cheap, ugly properties, and that's not what they want to buy. They want to buy a cheap, good property. Good property means good location, good conditions, technically okay, well connected, good neighborhood, etc. So where are these properties? Why don't you see them? There's an article I wrote, and it's on Metropolitan as well on the website about this. Is there a housing price paradox? Yes or no? Because you would expect prices to go down because of the economic recession, but people don't find those deals. So what's happening there? Here's the reality. Again, this is now from our daily expertise in the market. The portals, it doesn't matter which portal you look at, they list asking prices. So they list what the seller wants to get for the property. They have also historic data in there. And if you wait a few months, you might see a trend. But if you wait a few months, it's too late for your decision now. So there's asking prices which are different from the price that you agree with the seller or with a buyer for a property. There's typically a difference. In the beginning of economic uncertainty, as a situation as we are today, the gap, the delta between the asking price and the deal price increases. And that means that the real price goes down, and the owners, the sellers, they're reluctant to drop prices in the beginning of a recession, in the beginning of a crisis. They think their property is worth more, and or they think their property is better than their neighbor's property. Well, actually, it's the same, and it's not beautiful, and therefore they're reluctant. The buyer typically knows first when prices are dropping, because the buyer spends a lot of time in researching before buying a property. The seller doesn't. The seller goes to an agency, says, "Can you help me sell my property?" And do you know how agencies value properties in Spain? This is an interesting one. We should have done a poll, but it's too late now. So the number one question an agency uses to put a price on a property for sale is asking the owner, how much do you want for yourself? Great. I mean, not big science, but that's how it works. And then they inflate that number. Because a seller, as an owner, you ask it at least to 3 agencies. And if one agency, if the seller says, I would like to have 350,000 euro for the property, agent 1 will say, we sell this for 370. Agent 2 will say, we sell this for 380. And agent 3 maybe says 375 or 390 or 400. They want mandates to sell properties, otherwise they don't have customers. So they overpromise in an early stage. And of course they show the property, people say no, it's too expensive, they don't buy it. And then they need to tell their client, the owner, that the price should drop. Now, the big problem agencies have today is they've overpromised in the beginning, so they need to make this correction, and that correction is typically between a few percentage and maximum 10% that they're overpromising when properties are for a while on the market. But there's a second correction today. It's a Corona correction. So the market is down, and they don't have the guts to tell their customers that they overpromised. That's not true. They're not going to sell for 370 or 380. They're actually going to sell for 330. And so they don't do that, and therefore owners are also reluctant, or they don't drop the price yet because they trust their agent or the commercial agent who put a price on their property. In reality now, what we do see as well is, and I'll give you examples in a bit about examples of asking price to deal price, how big these differences are. But I was speaking to a few weeks ago to some of the biggest valuation companies in Spain. So when you take a mortgage, the bank sends a valuation company, they need to do a formal appraisal of the value of that property. The point today is that nobody has good data, because in the past they could just run some analysis on Idealista and other platforms, a few similar properties, and here's the value of your property. Now, there were no transactions in March, April, May, because you couldn't visit properties. So the lack of data, how do you evaluate a property today? So one of the big agencies, what they told me is they've instructed their teams to just a general rule to apply a corrective factor to every single valuation. And the corrective factor is 6% or between 6% and 13%. 6% when a property is fully renovated, ready to move in, beautiful. 13% negative correction on the price is when it needs renovation, when it's not in good conditions, etc., etc. Again, that is not what buyers are willing to pay. There's no indication for that. This is just a general rule they apply because they don't know how to evaluate properties today. So what do we see in the market? I'm giving a few examples here. Barcelona. So for those of you know Barcelona, Evelyn was looking for a property, and she said to rent out. And she had a budget of 250,000 for the property. Purchase costs, they are separate. We made a selection of properties. We found several good ones, and there was one which we particularly liked in the Calle Blai in Poble Sec in Barcelona. Beautiful old building. The property needs renovation, but it's an elevator, bright, high ceilings, beautiful floors and ceilings, everything. Asking a price 240. After iterations, they dropped it to 220, so it was already better. But this was in June, I think these negotiations were happening, and people are worried as well. They wanted to sell, and the deal price was 179. So 240 to 20, 179. That's a massive discount on such a property. Okay, you need to add 30K approximately for renovation, but even then, this is a purchase. This is a price that has not been seen for years on the market in Barcelona. Another example, Dave wanted a property in Eixample. He was very specific on the area. He wanted to be walking distance from Enrique Granados, from Paseo de Gracia. So he wanted to be the upper part of the left Eixample. That's where he wanted to be. Several properties we selected, and the one we went for, or he decided to go for, was bought for 410,000 euros, 115 square meter. Amazing price, unbelievable. You wouldn't expect this would be possible 6 months ago. Now, as an example of the lack of data, his bank valued the property for 440. So 410 purchase price, the bank values it for 440. So then you know you're making a very good purchase. Our own big data tools, because we have paid tools we use to look at big data to run appraisals for properties. It's not just about the square meters, that would be easy. It's also about the proximity of schools and services and plenty of different things. Our big data tools valued that property between 451 and 490. So different tools gave different numbers. And a purchase price of 410. So again, there, be mindful when you see prices. Sometimes there is a lot of negotiation potential, and sometimes there is not. Here's the example where there was not. Scott and his wife, they buying a property to live, not in the very center, like a second tier, like the areas around Gracia, Guinardó, that part of Barcelona. Asking price 240, purchase price 240, negotiation 0. Why is that? Why did we recommend them that was a good property to buy? Why do we think that is better value than other comparable properties in terms of location, square meters, etc.? Because it's worth more. The bank valued it. There were two bank valuations, one for 284, the purchase price 240. One bank said 284, and then the other bank did it, rated it for 320, which was worrying because there was then you have a tax problem if you buy that with that bank. So that we did when we decided to buy, we didn't know the valuation of the bank yet, but we had our own valuation and we knew this was a fantastic property, but we also realized we couldn't negotiate on it. So when I said earlier in this call that prices go down in Spain 10-12%, in Barcelona, so Barcelona, let's say it's between 8-10%, maybe 15%. For some properties, don't apply that rule to just any property because you might lose very good deals. You need to look at it case by case and get proper insights there. So from that point of view, I think today the network, the feeling with the market is a lot more important than just data. Data was king till a few months ago. Now it's more that feeling, that day-to-day insights is more important. Another reason why you won't see prices drop yet, and they will drop on the listing platforms, but again, if you want to buy, you don't need to wait. The opportunities are there. You can buy them. You can get the discounts. You can buy great purchases. You will also be able to buy them in 3 months later this year and beginning of next year probably as well. The difference is that today they're not advertised, and in a few months the discounts will be advertised, because at some point what I'm saying now here is the media will pick these things up. Agencies will start to see that prices are lower, and once that the media, the TV, for instance, La Vanguardia, once they start speaking about price drops in Spain, every owner will worry and will call his agent and they will lower prices the next day. As a seller, if you need to sell, because people on the call who are thinking of selling, it's better to negotiate a discount, maybe a bit more than what you were prepared to give as a discount, but take your money and get certainty. Because if everyone starts to lower prices, there's going to be a lot of properties that people will compare with your property, and the bottom price might not go lower, and you get the same price now. So I'm not saying that when I say these 10-12%, I'm not saying that will go down and down and down over time. It's what we see now, what we expect as well for the next months, beginning of next year. But they will, because there's a lot of very positive people in the sector who I think lack economic insights. They and you read it every day. Agencies don't realize that there's less transactions. They don't believe that prices will go down because they make one big mistake. There was a lot of demand for properties in June and July, and they were surprised because nobody expected so many buyers. So what happened? They confused this demand of June and July with like a stable ongoing demand. And that's not the case. A lot of people had made commitments to buy in January, February, March, beginning of March, before the lockdown, and they just executed their purchases. And those people went to notary in June and July. That's what you see in the data now. And they say, no, there's a lot of buyers, a lot of visitors for properties. The problem is they look at June, July, and they say, a lot of buyers. They should look at March, July. And when they look at March, July, and you compare that to last year, they're probably at 50% of their volume that they had last year. So there's an optimism that I think that people don't want to see it. They don't want to worry about it. But what drives the prices in this crisis? It's the economy. And the economy in Spain, the GDP of Spain, depending on the source you look at, is expected to go down this year by 10-12%. BBVA said 11.4, I believe, last week, this year. So it's a big fall in economic activity. At the same time, next year, it's likely that the economy can grow again by 7%. So it's a steep fall, but also a steep rise again in economic activity, conditional upon the second wave of COVID, of course. If this second wave becomes very, very hard and prolonged over time, it might make things worse. But people that live longer in Spain or that have done some more analysis, a lot of people compare the situation today with the crisis from 2008, when the financial crisis, the bubble, property prices dropped. Property prices in Spain dropped by 40% on average 12 years ago. I don't think that's going to happen now because the situation is very different. Banks are better prepared, mortgages are a lot healthier, people have a lot healthier debt levels, but also Europe is acting. Europe gave a very, very strong signal to the markets, to the countries. It was difficult to reach an agreement, but they've injected 750 billion into different countries to stimulate them. That's very encouraging. In the previous crisis, which started 2008, Europe didn't assume any debt till 2015. No debt. Now, after a few months of Corona, 750 billion on the table. So that's one difference. But two, in the, to give you an idea of the impact and why I believe that the prices are going to be low for a certain time is the 10% drop in GDP that happens this year. In the previous crisis, we need to compare this, between 2008 and 2013, I'll look at my numbers. The GDP dropped by a bit more than 9%, didn't reach 10% over let's say 6 years of crisis. 9% over the entire crisis. Today, 10% in 1 year, even not in one full year. So there's a condensed impact on the economy, and that's gonna lower demand significantly. On one side, demand for properties. It's going to increase supply significantly for people that need money, that need to sell properties, non-essential assets. So, and that's what creates this downward prices. That's what creates the opportunities. The worst year of the previous crisis, 2009, the economy dropped by 3.7%. Today we talk about plus 10% in 1 year, just to put it in perspective. It's true as well that Corona, and certainly because initially everyone thought that Corona would be 1.5 months and would be over. I think I wrote in Metropolitan, I think in April, can't remember, Victor, I think it was April, I said, I don't believe it's going to be 1.5 months, it's going to be a lot longer. So we see this now, it is longer. But this second wave, or whatever we call it, of COVID, is basically making a V-shaped recovery impossible. It's going to be U-shaped. It's going to take a lot longer, and that's so from implications again for you as a buyer or a seller. If you want to buy, look out for opportunities, prepare, talk to your bank, make sure you know what you can finance, so that when the opportunity is there, you can act very quickly before others buy it. And when you need to sell, be well informed. Don't believe just the agents from around the corner. Don't believe the big franchise agencies, because they have an incentive to overpromise, and then you will lose a lot of time, valuable time, and you will probably get less for your property what you get now, even with a discount. And we're coming towards the end of the story here. So where are the opportunities for buyers? If you want to buy a place to live yourself, house, an apartment, across Spain, you will find the discounts. I don't see any specific area where I think prices are going to go up. I can't imagine it. So you find these discounts. If you want to buy a property to rent it out as an investment, you should do that, in my opinion, in the cities, and not in the tier 2 cities. Do it in the tier 1 cities. Play in Champions League when you invest, because that's where demand is. That's where the companies are. That's where there's more employment, etc., etc. That's where international people are, rental demand, etc. Third opportunity is in financing your purchase. It doesn't matter if you buy to live or to rent it out. The banks, again, it's very attractive. The mortgages of the last 2 months that we've analyzed and locked in for our customers are between 1.4 in Spain, between 1.4 fix and 2.39 fix. So it depends on the profile of the person, on the amount of savings, on the property, etc. If it's 1.4, that means that if you ask 100,000 euro from the bank, that in year one, that costs you 1,400 euros. So that allows you to access a property that maybe otherwise you couldn't access. And the cost of that is very low. So if you do that as an investor to rent a property out, I encourage you to look at it. I can look at it with you if you want to do the analysis. But your return on investments is just multiplying. It's easy to get, well, easy. It's feasible to get 10-15% return on your own capital if you build in a proper leverage system with a bank, proper financing system. And I talk net numbers after having paid back the interest to the bank. So that's keep that into account. Now there are three important conditions to capitalize on these opportunities in the market. You need to find them. You need to find the right property. To negotiate it, because otherwise there's no point. Don't pay the price that you would have paid 6 months ago. Then nobody should do this. Some people do. It's not good. Negotiate it. And 3, de-risk everything, because part of what happens today is, I didn't mention this yet, but there's a lot of bad properties on the market that are presented as bargains, because some people need quick money and they want to sell first. If they have several properties, they want to first sell the worst one and keep the good ones for themselves, or try to do that. The agency doesn't have to mention any problems with the property, so they might not tell you. So be mindful of that. It's very easy in Spain. It became easier than ever before to buy a bad property at a great price with a great contract. Even with a great contract, you might make a very bad purchase. It's not just about the contract. Think about the property value, intrinsic value, long-term value of it. And these bad properties, what does that mean for you? It's these things like the building inspection, debt on the property. There's a lot of bajos or ground floor apartments for sale in Barcelona. Investors have bought them, have paid way too much for them, have done a crappy renovation on it, and now they try and sell it, and they won't sell them. They drop the prices, they're low. It's not good. It's not good property. It's not where you want to live, or it's not what people want to rent, but they're on the market. Apartments without cédulas, without proper living permits, etc. And so that's one warning sign to be mindful for. Bad properties rented as bargains. Evaluate them well. 2 is, we believe that 1 in 5 agencies is going to be disappearing in the next few months, next half a year. That's a lot. That's 1 in 5. Now this has implications, because when you see a property and you sign a reservation contract, you might sign that with the agency, and you pay maybe 1,000 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 euros with that reservation. That risk is acceptable. But if you commit to arras, if you sign an earnest money agreement, you pay 10% of the property purchase price. In many cases, that amount is paid to the agent. And the agent says it's better to pay to us, because what if the seller passes away? What if the brothers and sisters don't agree in the end? There's a debate, etc., etc. So, and sometimes also the sellers ask to send it to pay that money to the agency, because then they don't have to distribute it. It's easier, etc. Now, imagine you sign a commitment contract. You pay 10%. You pay, let's say, 40,000 euro for 400k property, and tomorrow the agency doesn't pick up the phone, because it's one of these 5 who's disappearing. And just look around, you see agencies closed already in Barcelona. Outside Barcelona, even more. So these things you got to anticipate, and we add specific things in our contracts. We do things differently than 6 months ago when it comes to payments and who you pay to, how you document them, etc. And a third and final warning sign is, if people are interested in new developments, so properties not in Barcelona typically, but in the countryside or on the coast, off-plan properties, the construction companies, the promotores, they will struggle. They've got big financial commitments to finance their projects, and buy in a very late stage of a property development. Buy something that's nearly ready or ready. Don't buy something where they still need to get a building permit, where they still need to do every single step, or even knock down an old building before they can build a new one, because they might never start the works. New developers, what they do is they need to sell first a certain percentage of properties, it's often around 40%, before they can validate their construction project. You don't know that as a buyer. It is somehow mentioned in your contracts, typically, if you buy such an off-plan property. If they don't sell 40% just on paper, the banks don't finance the building works. That simple is it. So it's not a time to buy in an early stage, buy things that are nearly ready. And again, here, careful, you don't only choose a property, you choose as well the developer, because those companies, some of them will struggle, the smaller ones, I think, because the big ones have a lot of foreign capital. And if they go bankrupt, what happens? Because with an existing property, you pay 10% when you commit to buy. With a new development, an off-plan project, you pay easily up to 40% before you go to notary, because you pay in different at different stages, different milestones. So that was a bit what I think what I wanted to cover in terms of what's happening in the market, how Spain is different, where are the opportunities, what can you expect of the prices, how long will this last? How long will the lower prices be around? So they are around. Nobody knows. It will depend on the economic recovery, how quickly that goes. Typically, you first need the economy to pick up, but again, we said that might go quickly. It might go at a rate of 7% next year. So steep fall, steep increase. First, the economy picks up, then employment picks up, and then real estate picks up, because people want this certainty in this order, or the other way around if it goes down. So be ready, be prepared, don't rush, but be able to act when you see the opportunity, because you can live in a way better property at a cheaper price, or you can make a very good investment. And if you want to sell, be realistic, get good advice on the valuation, and be prepared to negotiate, to offer a larger discount now, instead of putting it at risk and maybe getting it not sold, or selling it for a lot less than what you could get today. We're gonna, I think, open it up for questions. I need to look at the...
There's a healthy amount of questions there in the chat room.
Okay, so, okay, I'm in the chat room now. Give me a few seconds, please. There's people asking, is good webinar, is this going to be recorded? So if technology runs properly, yes, it should be recorded. You will also receive a follow-up email after this, an automatic email from the system with the link for more information, etc. So get that. Yeah, here's a question. Natasha says, how do we find the properties that aren't advertised? I think you can't. I guess you can't. That's part of our business, where we have built over the years a network in the sector, network of people who know when properties come on the market. Who knows that? Well, historically, the two biggest reasons why people sell properties are inheritances and divorces. That's the two main reasons why people sell property. The third reason is people want to upgrade, they want to buy a bigger property, or they want to move, etc. So, because we speak with notaries, with lawyers, with lots of different people every single day, they know what we're looking for, and they let us know when such properties are, not on the market, when they are for sale, when we can visit them. For us, why do we get these properties from that network? Because we don't just ask what you have for sale, well, that's not on the market. That doesn't work. We qualify our buyers very well. When we accompany a buyer, it starts with understanding what you want to buy, what area, what type of property, is it for yourself to rent out, what budget, how do you finance this, etc. What is important to you, do you live there with a family, or we need to understand a lot of very practical things to know, to evaluate if a property is good for you. But if we understand that and we communicate that, we translate that into our network, they can very precisely send us properties that meet those criteria. So I think that's the answer to your question, Natasha. if you let me know what you're looking for, I'm happy to have a discussion with you offline and see if we can how we can help. Not going to interest rates. 1.4% is great, but I've heard that banks don't give mortgages to people who work freelance or are autonomous. Is that the case? If not, what are the conditions they typically ask? So that's incorrect, that statement, but it's not entirely incorrect. So banks, they don't like risk. They prefer to see a big company and a stable income and a high stable income. If they can, that's their preferred customer. But no, many of our customers are autonomous, and many of our customers are they work as marketing professionals, or as we've got translators now. We've got someone who's doing something in events who is hit harder now. Other people work as a freelance IT person for a company. So banks do finance, but it's different. If you're a freelance and you can't prove income, then it's going to be very difficult. Then the banks don't like it. If you're a freelance and you can prove income, we can help you. We can look with the banks. Not all banks will do it. Some banks will be more reluctant, but a priori, there is no reason why it shouldn't work. Conditions might be different because every bank is. In the session about mortgages, we can just talk more about what banks look at and how, because there's no. It's very hard to compare mortgages, but it's also every bank has their own internal rules to evaluate if someone qualifies or not for a purchase. I was in the same property listed on Idealista multiple times with different agencies. Well, that's yeah. Some people give their property to different agencies, and then it's even worse. The market is a jungle in Spain, but if you give the same property to multiple agencies, it only creates chaos. Because then sometimes one agency has a buyer who makes a reservation. They don't mention it to the other agency because they don't care because it's a competitor. And then you go and see a property, you make a reservation, and they say, oh, it's reserved already, but they tell you that 1.5 weeks later. So it's just because the way, the not very professional way the sector works. I'm trying to be polite here. Do you predict an increase in interest rates? So it might be prudent for a buyer to wait a few months for prices to drop, but is there a risk that the mortgage rate might go up? I don't think so, or at least not a significant increase. So there's two parts in your question. So I don't think rates will go up because of the hard recession that we're going through. The economy needs stimulation and business are struggling like hell. So we don't expect it. I think they will remain low for a few years. Not just for a few months, for a few years. For the first time ever, I think that we can say that with pretty high certainty. It depends on how quickly the economy will recover next year. But even then, it will recover, but it will recover from a very deep point. So in the sector, when I speak to people, and also my opinion, I don't think it will increase significantly in the near future. What it means is I recommend you take fixed interest rates with a bank. Don't take variable rates. It can only go up. Euribor is at minus 0.34 or something like that. So fix is a lot better. Fix or a mixed model. Many banks offer now a model where you have 10 or 20 years fixed interest rate, and then the remaining part of your duration is variable. And it's okay, because then your outstanding capital is way lower, and the impacts of an interest rate increase would be not that important. Do you see more people buying outside the city? People believing that there will be another lockdown, trying to get into the coast, for example. I had an interesting debate about this topic with the director of Fotocasa, one of the listing platforms. And so they were saying people are buying property outside the center. And my point was, I said, people are just looking on your website because they see more traffic. And Idealista also sees more traffic for people looking for properties. But people are evaluating options. And you saw that right after the lockdown. So people are tired of being locked into an apartment, and they search. They say, could we buy? And you just look around for a certain budget, what is possible, but it doesn't mean that all those people are buying. Certainly not. So we see some type of buyers, partially in the international community, that's true, who, because some of the international community have higher net incomes than locals, and are less affected because they work for bigger companies, etc. They're looking now to buy a place outside the center, either as a weekend house, not too much to really move and live. Actually, we see the opposite as well. Actually, people moving towards the center. And I think the other part is it's a lot of people looking at it, but it's not very practical. To take the decision to move from the city, you need to, if there's kids, you need to change the schools, and you need to think about work. You might need another car, etc. Build up a new social network, etc. So, not necessarily. What constitutes a bad property? Well, it's an interesting question. There's no single or simple answer to that, of course. You need to evaluate a property from different dimensions. One is, objectively speaking, is this property, how good is this property? Compared to the price, compared to other properties on the market, compared to what we've seen in the market. But then two, you need to compare it as well against your priorities. Because if you say, I'm going to work a lot more from home, so I need a lot of light, and I need a second bedroom with sufficient light and space, etc. Maybe some outside space. If the property doesn't have it, well, then it's a bad property. But that is subjective. That is for your situation. Objectively speaking, there is a lot of bad properties. It's often a technical problem. So, examples. When we evaluate apartments or houses for buyers, we look at it, we think about value for money, but also we have one of our architects go in, an architect who doesn't know you, he doesn't know why you buy it, if it's an investment or if it's for yourself to live or it's your dream or whatever, and we ask our architect to certify his or her observations about the property, technically speaking. And that's very important, because then you see, like, it's not, you buy an apartment in a building. So you need to look not just at, is the apartment structurally okay, how's the layout, there's often some cracks in the wall. Are they important? Are they not important? Sometimes the floor isn't fully leveled, and that might be an indication that the building has wooden beams instead of iron beams, or metal beams, because it's a bit older. That happens a lot in Eixample or Borne or Gótico. In Barcelona, wooden structure. That's hard to repair these things, so that's bad. But equally, it can be that the apartment looks good, but we had a case now where in the same building there is ocupas, squatters, it's occupied building. So that makes it a different, that classifies differently than the property. Or the building might need a lot of maintenance works. We had a case where the apartment was good, the price, objectively speaking, would be attractive for the property, but we knew that the building needs, because the building inspection is mandatory, the building needs to redo the facade, to do the rear facade and all the drains in the patio de luces, in the light areas, and that's what, 95,000 euros. So, and that, okay, then it's a difference. Then it becomes very close to being a bad property. Bad property can also be that there's problems with urban planning, for instance. We've seen properties where it was very nice on Aragon, close to Sagrada Familia somewhere, and attractive price, beautiful property, light, little outside space, etc. And the agent didn't say anything, and we do the due diligence. Then we figure out that there's urban plans approved to expropriate the entire block, actually several blocks of buildings in that area, and the seller didn't say it. And this was one of the big luxury agencies in Barcelona, who promote themselves as and we call them and say, why don't you tell us? And they say, we'll find a buyer who doesn't do the checks. So that is how it works. So that makes it a bad property. Okay, but there's many other ways, of course, why a property can't. While we declassify property, and where we don't put a property in the short list to present to our buyers. Can a foreigner obtain a mortgage? Yes, that's a short answer. Every bank has different rules. Some banks look at it by country. Some banks look at it by why you buy, what property you buy. Other banks look at where your money comes from. If you can prove the origin of your funds, the origin of your money, that it's clean, there shouldn't be an issue. Mhm. Depends as well if you're foreigner resident or not resident in Spain. That impacts the percentage banks finance. So if you're non-resident, you have to put more money on the table yourself. If you're resident here, meaning you're paying taxes here, fiscal resident, then the banks can finance up to 80% or something like that. Again, that comes in episode 3 as well. If you're close to buying, if you take a decision, just email me at raf.inspireapartments.com and we'll discuss it separately. Is a Nuda a good investment? I guess you mean, is Nuda Propiedad a good investment? It's an investment with higher potential returns and therefore also higher risk. Nuda means that you buy only the ownership of a property, but you don't have the rights on the property. It means someone is still living there. For example, usufruct. I think is it the right English word? Usufruct, usufruto in Spanish. So you can't use it yourself. So purchase price is often cheaper, but you have a con. You have a negative side there, which is that. Happens more and more on the market because some companies try to convince older people that this might be a good way for them to get some cash, but they have still a house to live in, but they have some cash which they can distribute again within their family. Is it normal practice in Spain to negotiate price with construction companies? Would you expect a drop in prices of new properties? Very good question, Sasha. It wasn't usual. It's still not usual to do that. The new developments are not yet much affected by price drops, and the reason is very simple. New developments, and I don't know what area you talk about, but if you look at, for example, on the coast, on the Costa Brava here, you have fairly small projects of new developments, 20 units, 20 properties, 40 properties. If you go towards the Costa del Sol, developments often have 100 plus different apartments in one project, which might be different phases, but it's a lot bigger. If they drop the price for one buyer by, let's say, the apartment is 220,000 euros, and they make that 200, that news will spread, and they might have another 99 buyers complaining, requesting the same discount, and they don't want that. They want to avoid that. The developers, they believe today that the market will pick up as soon as the travelers, international travelers, can come back as well. So that's why also they don't lower prices yet. And certainly the larger ones, they have learned from the previous crisis when most of them went bankrupt, and they have significant capital, including foreign capital, in their company. So they should be able to absorb a buffer. Now, what do we see in reality? Things are not advertised here when you negotiate. Some we talked with Acciona recently for properties in Girona that didn't want to move the needle, didn't want to drop the price. Others, they don't drop the price, but you get the parking space for free, or you get the household appliances for free or at a big discount. And if you look at that package that you get, you quickly get to like 5% of the property price, sometimes a bit more. And so that, yes, there is a way to get some to save money, but not directly on the purchase price, or at least not in most cases. I was speaking to one of the, I think, top 3, top 4 largest developers in Spain a few weeks ago in August, and they are considering for some developments dropping the price by 10% directly across the board, 10%. It's not, they've not decided it. They said they are considering it. It depends as well if they have properties that are ready and therefore they can wait, or if they still need to construct and they need money to finance, to inject in the construction project. Which areas you cover for properties not on the market? You cover Costa Brava. What is it for off-market properties, I assume? Yes, we work across most parts of Spain to help buyers. What about retired people on a fixed lifetime pension? Not sure what the question is, but if it is to buy, it's no problem. If it is to get financing, the banks, you probably, when you're on a pension, you don't want to take, and the banks won't give you a mortgage anymore. Apologies, but I'm not sure what the question exactly is here. Then you expect that one-bedroom apartments with big terraces will become more popular with foreigners because of the increased remote working. Not necessarily this type of apartment that you describe, but yes, people, and you can. I was interviewed on that topic by Emo Academy. It's a professional website for real estate. And one of the things I said is a lot of our customers, they don't only look for a second residence, if they buy a second residence, they also want a second home office. If you live abroad and you come here, you need a place to work. In the past, people didn't bother about that. Now people want that. So what does it mean? If a second bedroom or a third bedroom with sufficient space for a desk, not too dark. It's a big problem in Barcelona. Often third bedroom is very dark. And outside space, yes, becomes popular in demand, but there's a trade-off. Outside space is expensive. You pay more for a terrace, of course. So then, typically for most people, the budget is fixed, and they need to decide: do I want a terrace, but therefore I compromise on not having such a nice property, or having a smaller property, or maybe in a worse location, or a worse street, or a street that after midnight isn't that safe, etc. So there's a trade-off. If you have sufficient funds, yes, we see more demand for properties with outside space, large balconies or terraces. Not everyone wants a terrace. The remote working trend, of course, is impacting people. People look at that. Where we could find reliable information regarding the actual trends on this webinar. You're in the right session. Well, it depends. You need to. I think I'm happy to help you with you, but you need to have the information, adapt it, apply it to your situation, because again, average prices. The average property doesn't exist, and I assume you don't want to buy the average property. Or when you sell, probably your property is not the average property. So be very cautious with prices. The first things we do with our clients is, beside understanding what they're looking for, they want to buy or sell, is setting realistic expectations in terms of the market, and looking beyond just today, in terms of the economy, the value for money, etc. I've read that buyers under 32 pay 5% property tax as opposed to 10%. If so, okay. So it's not just based on age. That will be simple. So that there are certain conditions that you need to meet to get this, what I call bonification in property tax, and pay 5% instead of 10%. So we have this, for example, now for a customer who bought a 220,000 property, and he's going to pay only 5%. He is under that age. He meets the other conditions. To have the other conditions, I don't want to share them here, because it's a long list, and I don't want to be unprecise when I give information away. It's fiscal regulations. But when you're working here, you're resident here, you use the place to live yourself, not to rent it out, and you're under that age, you should qualify for this 5% property tax. So there is some more requirements indeed. I wonder about the increased level of crime and ocupas in Barcelona province. It is hard to know if it's just dramatic headlines or real risk. Here, please. Okay, ocupas. It's in the news a lot now. It is a real problem. I've not seen situations myself, luckily, privately or with a company or with our customers, where it happened. I've seen cases where there were ocupas in the same building, so not in the apartment, but in the same building, where the buyer still decided to buy, because that I don't mind, because it depends as well what type of ocupas you have, of course. In that case, there was a family or a few families, and they were living there when they were collecting metal from the street, etc. But they were not problematic in terms of communication with the neighbors or noise or smells, etc. So that's right, and sometimes that is the case. So there are, statistically speaking, more cases. The law is very bad for it. It's difficult as an owner to handle this situation. In Barcelona, this is a result mainly from the current local authorities who promote or who let these things happen, and instead of offering social housing or support to people in need, they push the problem to owners who have who might be living there themselves, and suddenly a family doesn't have a home anymore because someone else lives there, or if it's an apartment that was empty or was rented. Um, so they push it to the private sector instead of addressing it through the public sector. So I think there's a lot of pressure on the politicians to change the legislation there. I'm hopeful they will change it, because that's uncertainty, which is not good for owners, of course. How can you? Oh, do I need to go faster to these questions, or? Okay, I see people stay on, so I'm just. If you want me to be shorter in my answers, just put me in the chat box, and I will. How can you find out about problems that agent seller does not disclose? This happened to me, and now I'm in the middle of problems. Thank you for those examples. Well, I think it's experience. It's because they're not obliged to tell you. There is no central database or system where you can look up the information. There is no general checklist of things that you need to check. It's really I think having seen so many different cases and knowing what to ask for, what to check, etc., to avoid these type of situations, to identify, to anticipate. We anticipate a lot. We check for things, and often the answer is okay, it's good, no problem. But at least we've checked it. What we never do is just assuming that what the seller says is right. We've had a case in July where the seller said the building passed the technical inspection, and the building didn't pass the technical inspection. So we said, they even put it on email. We said, you told us it passed inspection, and now we see the building needs maintenance works. No, but we didn't really know, and the owner didn't really know, and that's how they get out of the discussion. So you've got to check it properly up front. Can buying property facilitate a resident visa? Yes. There's something called like a golden visa scheme in Spain, and when you buy a property or properties worth in total 500,000 euro, debt-free, so can't take a mortgage for it, and some other conditions. Well, no, that's the main condition actually. 500,000 euro debt-free. You can apply for this golden visa. We had questions recently from someone from the UK who said, can I get a golden visa? No, you can't yet, because there's no clarity yet on the exact agreement between the UK and Spain, and you don't need golden visa at the moment if you're British. You can't apply for it. It doesn't apply. We had a couple already. Both were Indian, but the wife had Singapore Indian, I think, had a British nationality, and the husband didn't. So the husband could get a golden visa for himself and for the daughter, but not for the wife, because she can't apply for it yet. If Brexit goes wrong, there's no proper agreement, she will be able to apply for it in the future. Actually, it gives you, if you buy that, you get residence permit, you get work permit, and you travel across Schengen area without border controls. It's an entry ticket to Europe, basically. Is it normal to tell the agent the amount of money you have? I find it not a good idea. No, don't tell them. You go and see a property, it's about the purchase price of the property. Don't tell them how you're going to buy it with own funds or with a mortgage. That's your business. There's a good example of things where many people, I mean, everyone has his own strengths, right? It's good in certain things, but a lot of people apparently don't feel very comfortable talking about money or negotiating. And that can be because the person you are. It can also be because the country you come from. For example, I'm from Belgium and I live here for 20 years. And Belgian people are very polite in general. They don't want to get into conflict, and now I'm generalizing and making a bit of a joke out of it. And that's often not helpful in a negotiation in Spain. Okay, so you need to use the way they work, address it, but don't show your cards. We can have that negotiation, we can have the discussion with them for you. I'm pretty sure we get better deals or negotiate harder, because if they know how much money you have, if they know you that you can buy it, then or if they know it's your dream property. Never become too excited. If you two people, for instance, one should be the good cop, one should be the bad cop when you see a property. Okay. Otherwise, the agent will see that there's a high potential for a deal, and your negotiation potential just disappears. Mariam, when selling, is it possible to directly go for the contrato compraventa or the arras? Yep. When buying as well. So you don't need to do reservation. Actually, you don't need to do arras. We've done a deal after Corona, where we with our buyer went straight to a notary. It can happen. It's not standard. It's rather an exception, but in some cases it makes sense. And obviously this helped us to negotiate extremely hard, because we had all due diligence done very quickly. Everything was clarified, and we could directly go to a notary, offer basically the full amount of money to the owner the week afterwards, and he agreed. He agreed to the offer. In the next webinar, we talk about the buying process. So you join us then as well, Mariam. The normal thing is reservation contract, arras contract, notary. Mortgages for retired people, very, very difficult. For retired people, what I would recommend you look at is if you have other properties, maybe even in your home country, you could maybe take a mortgage on that property, bring that money to Spain, and use that as money to buy a property here. But mortgage means you need money to pay back the mortgage. And if you're retired with an income, that's one thing. But if you're retired and only with a pension, then that's more difficult. Do you see many commercial spaces and office spaces being converted to residential property? In my neighborhood, which is quite residential, virtually all the commercial spaces have been converted to residential use. So I don't know where you live or which neighborhood you talk about. It happens in some parts where, but not every property can be converted or is easily convertible into residential. From a property characteristics point of view, and two, you need to get the permits to do that. It's not a simple process to just convert it. What is obvious is that commercial space is hit very hard by the current, well, by the past lockdown and the current recession, economically speaking. A lot of shops locales are closed, won't open again, are for sale. But that's not the type of property that you easily convert to residential, because nobody wants to live on a ground floor in a city where there's cars and people walking around day and night, and for security, etc. And this, for offices, the same. Demand for office went down. Office price, to give you an idea, on Paseo de Gracia, so super prime location in Barcelona, office price was in January €24 per square meter, and is now about €21 per square meter. And then often you still need to offer your tenants a discount during 6 or 12 months to get them to sign contracts, because companies are rethinking their need for office space. So it's not usual to do that, and I don't think it will happen too much now, because also on the residential market there is going to be less buyers, and therefore it's risky to invest money into that. If I buy in cash, do I need arras? ARAS is not mandatory, as I mentioned before. It's in most cases strongly recommended to have ARAS, except if everything is really clean on the property, on the buyer, and there is trust, but it's mostly not the case. So you need ARAS. And about ARAS, ARAS doesn't mean that the agency gives you the ARAS contract and says, look, that's the contract you need to sign here on Friday. Then you have an ARAS contract, then you have a bad ARAS contract. That contract protects the seller, who is a customer of the agency. Our contracts, they anticipate things that can go wrong in between making a purchase commitment, ARAS, and going to a notary. And a lot of things can go wrong there. So you need to anticipate them. So there's clarity on what happens if. And I think then I sleep a lot better when I know my customers have these contracts, but you will also sleep a lot better with a proper contract that protects your interests. Thank you. What is your email address? You'll get an email after this webinar with our contact details, and then we can schedule a personal one-to-one contract. Norm asks, what is ARAS? ARAS is a contract when you commit to buy. In French, it's a compromis d'achat. In English, you use the term earnest money agreement. It's a step before you go to notary. Both parties commit to buy and to sell. You pay typically 10% of the purchase price. The implication is if as a buyer you don't buy the property afterwards, you lose your 10%. If the seller doesn't sell it to you for whatever reason, he owes you the double amount. So it's strong buyer protection in this contract, but you need to anticipate a lot of other topics as well in there. So I think I'm through the question. Well, it's a long list of questions. I hope you found it useful. Reach out if you want to discuss your personal project to buy, to invest, to sell with me. The first calls with there's no commitment, there's no cost related to it. It's absolutely free. I will listen to your case, give you my point of view, my opinion for your case. I'll explain as well how we can help you. And until there is no commitment at all required from your end. Register for the upcoming episodes in October, November, and December. And I think I had here. Hold on before this turns off. So how to stay tuned, how to stay informed. The next sessions we discussed that. Follow us on Facebook and on our blog posts, blog page. We put quite a lot of articles. When I got interviewed or write articles, these things go on Facebook on our blog, so you can see them there. And here is the email address if you want to set up a personal meeting. Just write me at raf@inspireapartments.com.
Okay. Raf, do you want to just review the themes of the coming months?
Yes. So recap, next month we talk about the buying process, examples of what can go wrong in Spain, what you need to watch out for, things like the reservation contract, the ARAS contract, the notary, the due diligence, the architect, the lawyer, that part. In November, we talk about the financing, the mortgages, as a foreigner, as a resident, as a non-resident, how much money you need, etc. And the last session is about, in December, typical trade-offs that you have. Do you do this or that, A or B? But you need to take decisions, and we try and guide you and help you take these decisions for you. If you're in the middle of a project, thinking of buying, making an offer, if made an offer already or selling, don't wait for these sessions, of course. Just write me and we'll set up a call in the next days as soon as reasonably possible. So, is there a final poll, Jeff? Yeah.
I think we just had one other question, is that if we're going to be announcing the next sessions, and obviously we will, here at Metropolitan, we always want to add value to the expat community and people who are looking to make Barcelona their home and know how to effectively navigate and be a resource for them. So I think that's it, Raf. Thank you very much for all of this useful information. And
we're gonna launch one final question on the screen, but just for us to understand how helpful this webinar was for you, and because we spent a lot of time in preparing this, of course, and we like to hear your feedback on this. 60% has voted. For the other, if you don't mind, this is important feedback for us. A single click helps us a lot. So 3 out of 4 people have clicked have rated the webinar. If you're still online, or you can click. Some people might not be able to click because sometimes on the phone it might not work. Okay, what? 5 more seconds, Jeff, and then 5, and then we close it.
I've been very happy, Raf. It was very informative. I took a lot of notes, and I think it's very useful for me.
I'm also very transparent here, just sharing the results. So 1 out of 2 people thought it's a 10 out of 10, and then the lowest score is an 8. So I think thank you for that feedback. That's encouraging, and let me know for the next sessions if you want to address specific topics, because the better we understand your questions, the better we can tailor it, the more relevant we can make it.
Okay.
Then everyone have a very good evening. Thanks for joining, and see you in the next session, next episode.
October 6th. See you then.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Nicely done, Raf. Nicely done.